Greetings to my dear guests on this video. I wish you a pleasant viewing and look forward to your feedback in the comments. I never thought that the career I had been building for 6 years would collapse in a single day, and then be restored with a single phone call. But first things first. My name is Emily Johnson. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 3 years I've been working as a senior marketer at Global Vision, a medium-sized company in Chicago with ambitions to go international. I can't say we had the perfect team, but I loved my job. I love diving into data analysis, looking for patterns, and creating strategies. And until a certain point, I believed that the company valued my approach. It all started last August. After another quarterly meeting, the marketing director, Robert Dixon, called me into his office. "Emily, I have a special project for you," he said, tapping his fingers on the table, which he always did when he was in a good mood. "Tech Growth has approached us. Do you know this client?" Of course, I knew them. Tech Growth is the largest distributor of technology solutions for businesses on the East Coast. Landing a client like this would not only double our turnover, but also seriously boost the company's prestige. They need a complete marketing strategy for a new line of business. Their competitors are hot on their heels, and they want something fresh and innovative. What do you think? My heart began to beat faster. This was the chance I had been waiting for. "I'm interested, Robert. Very interested." He smiled. "I knew you would agree. Jessica from sales suggested you when we were discussing who to assign to this project. She said you have the best strategic thinking in the company." Jessica Miller had been a good friend of mine since I joined the company. We often had lunch together and discussed work matters. She always supported my ideas, and I was grateful for her trust. "Here are the materials to get you started." Robert handed me a folder with the Tech Growth logo. "You'll have access to all the resources you need." "And Emily, this is a very important client. It could change the future of our company, and yours too." I took the folder and, unable to hide my excitement, asked, "What's the deadline?" 8 months to develop a complete strategy. In April, you'll give a presentation to Tech Growth's management. That's a lot of time, but there's a lot of work to be done. When I left the office, I was overwhelmed with emotion. This was my chance to prove myself, to show what I was really capable of. Perhaps this project could bring me the long-awaited promotion to Director of Strategic Marketing, a position I had been dreaming of for several years. Returning to my desk, I immediately opened the folder. Inside was basic information about Tech Growth, their current market position, and general requirements for the project. I had just started reading when I received a message from Jessica. "Congratulations, you deserve it. Shall we celebrate today?" After work, we met at our favorite bar near the office. "To your success!" Jessica raised her glass. "You deserve this project more than anyone." "Thanks for the recommendation," I said sincerely. "It means a lot to me." Jessica waved it off. "It was an easy recommendation. Besides, I know you'll do great. It's a little scary, to be honest. 8 months is a long time. But you'll be fine." She squeezed my hand. "And when it's over, I'll have to call you Miss Director of Strategic Marketing." We laughed, but deep down, I really believed it was possible. The next day, I dove into my work. The first few weeks were spent researching. I analyzed the market, studied Tech Growth's competitors, and gathered data on the target audience. I had a large board in the corner of my office where I created a project map, adding new elements every day. A month later, I had my first meeting with Michael Waters, Tech Growth's Director of Development. I prepared a preliminary analysis and several conceptual ideas for discussion. The meeting went very well. Michael was impressed by the depth of my analysis. "You see things we haven't even thought of, Miss Johnson," he said at the end of the meeting. "I like your approach." After that meeting, the work became even more intense. I often stayed late at the office. Sometimes, when everyone else had gone home, I stayed behind, continuing to work on the project. It was my brainchild, and I put my heart and soul into it. After 3 months, I noticed that my colleagues were starting to show increased interest in my work, especially David Clark, Robert's deputy. He often came over to my desk, asked me about the project, and offered to help. "If you need any support, just let me know," he would say with a smile that somehow didn't seem sincere. I always thanked him politely, but kept the details to myself. Something about his interests seemed unnatural to me. However, I chalked it up to my perfectionism and protective attitude toward the project. By the 6th month of work, I had the basis of the presentation ready, more than 80 slides with detailed analysis, strategy, and forecasts. I had created something more than just a marketing plan. It was a comprehensive development strategy that could change Tech Growth's positioning in the market and give them a serious competitive advantage. In February, with 2 months to go before the presentation, Robert asked me to show a draft version to him and some of his colleagues. "We need to make sure we're on the right track before we present this to the client," he explained. I agreed, although I would have preferred to wait until the presentation was completely ready. Robert, David, Jessica, and several other marketers from our department were present at the meeting. The presentation lasted almost 2 hours. I explained every aspect of the strategy in detail and answered numerous questions. When I finished, the room fell silent. "That's impressive," Robert finally said. "You've done a great job, Emily." The others nodded, but it was hard to tell what they really thought from their expressions. Only Jessica looked genuinely impressed. "That's amazing, Emily. I had no idea you were so deeply involved in this project." After the meeting, David asked for a copy of my presentation for review. I sent him the file without thinking much of it. Then March came, and everything started to change. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, but I felt that something was wrong. By mid-March, I felt that the atmosphere in the office had changed. Small details began to form a disturbing picture. It all started when I noticed some strange activity in the documentation system. My project was password protected, but the access history showed that the files had been viewed late at night or early in the morning when I wasn't in the office. I checked the log and saw David's login. Strange. Why would he be looking at my files at 11 p.m. on a Sunday? "David, I noticed you accessed my Tech Growth project files over the weekend," I said, catching him at the coffee machine. He froze for a moment. "Oh, yes. Robert asked me to check some details for a meeting with investors." "I hope you don't mind?" "What meeting with investors?" I asked, surprised. "Didn't Robert tell you?" David looked uncomfortable. He mentioned the Tech Growth project as an example of our work with major clients. The next day, I overheard Robert and David talking in the hallway. "We need to cut it down to the main points," Robert said. "Leave only the most important stuff." "I'm already working on it," David replied. "I think 10 slides will be enough for the key ideas." They quickly fell silent when they noticed me. Then I began to notice strange omissions. I wasn't invited to the weekly marketing department meeting, with the explanation that there had been a technical glitch. The same thing happened the following week. My colleagues became strangely quiet when I walked by. Even Jessica distanced herself. When I invited her to lunch, she declined, citing her busy schedule. This was unusual. We always found time to have lunch together. The turning point came in early April, 2 weeks before the scheduled presentation. I walked into the conference room early and saw my slide from the Tech Growth presentation on the screen. Robert, David, and several managers were in the room. David was standing in front of the screen explaining my concept. My idea. Only the slide was in different colors and had the marketing department's logo instead of my name. "Emily, is something wrong?" Robert noticed me. Everyone turned to me. I felt the blood rush to my face. That's my project. What's going on?" David quickly switched slides. "This is an internal presentation of the department's work results," Robert replied. "We're reviewing all current projects, including yours." "But why is David presenting it?" I tried to remain calm. "Emily, let's discuss this after the meeting." Robert sighed. After everything, I received a letter. "Come to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. We need to discuss the Tech Growth project." In the morning, I checked the file access history. They hadn't just been viewed, they had been copied and modified. And not just by David, but by Jessica as well. Robert and David were waiting for me in Robert's office. "We've decided to change the format of the presentation," Robert began. "Your work was an excellent foundation, but the client needs something more focused. We've cut it down to 10 key slides." "You cut 8 months of work down to 10 slides? Without my input?" I protested. "Emily, you have to understand, we're on a tight deadline," David interjected. "The decision has already been made," Robert said curtly. David and the marketing team will give the presentation. Your work will be credited. So you're taking my project and giving it to David? It's not your project, Robert replied harshly. It's the company's project. Jessica caught up with me in the hallway. Did you know about this? I asked bluntly. Did you know they were going to take my project? She looked away. I didn't think it would turn out like this. Robert said you would get the credit you deserve. But you helped them copy my files, I said. Emily, please understand. It's business. That's how corporations work. On my computer, I discovered that access to the project folder had been blocked. They had thought of everything, but I had a backup copy of all the materials on my personal cloud storage. I sat at my desk, trying to make sense of what had happened. My career, my ambitions, everything was falling apart before my eyes. And then I remembered a meeting that had taken place 3 months earlier, one that only I knew about. A meeting that could now be my only chance to restore justice. At that moment, I realized that all was not lost. I had a plan B that no one suspected. The morning after my meeting with Robert and David, I went to work as usual. Outwardly, I tried to look calm, although inside I was boiling. My colleagues studiously avoided my gaze, and Jessica didn't even show up at the office. Around noon, I received a letter from HR. Please come in at 2 p.m. for an important conversation. I wasn't surprised. I expected some kind of reaction after yesterday's conflict. At the appointed time, I knocked on the door of HR manager Sarah Parker. Have a seat, Miss Johnson, she said, pointing to a chair and avoiding my gaze. I have some unpleasant news. Management has decided to terminate your employment. Even though I had expected something like this, hearing it out loud was painful. On what grounds? I asked in an even voice. Incompatibility with corporate culture and insubordination, she read from the sheet. Your behavior at yesterday's meeting was deemed unacceptable. So, the fact that I was upset about my work being stolen is insubordination? I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Sarah finally looked up at me. Emily, I'm just relaying management's decision. The company is offering you a standard severance package in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement. She handed me a folder with documents. What if I don't sign? Then the company reserves the right to take legal action for breach of your employment contract, specifically the confidentiality clause. I understood. They were afraid I would tell their potential client about the theft. Funny, but they were too late with that assumption. I need some time to think about it, I said, taking the folder. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer will be withdrawn. I returned to my desk, where the security manager was waiting for me to supervise the collection of my belongings. Standard procedure, he explained. As I packed my personal belongings into a box, I noticed David watching the process from his office. He had a barely concealed smug smile on his face. I knew he had been eyeing the position of Director of Strategic Marketing for a long time, and now, having presented my project as his own, he was well on his way to a promotion. As I was heading for the elevator, Jessica ran up to me. Emily, wait! I'm so sorry, she said, her eyes filled with remorse. I didn't know it would end with you getting fired. I looked at her without emotion. How did you think it would end, Jessica? That I would just give up my job and applaud when David got all the credit for it? I gave in to pressure. Robert hinted that those who weren't on the team might suffer in the next round of layoffs. And you chose your side. I understand, I said without judgment. But you know what's ironic? If you had just talked to me, things could have been different. I turned and walked away, leaving her with that thought. At home, I opened the severance package the company had offered me. 3 months' salary in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement and waiving any claims. They were clearly nervous that I might tell TechGrowth the truth. I put the papers aside and opened my laptop. My cloud storage contained a complete copy of all my work, including daily backups and a changelog clearly showing the authorship of every idea and concept. But another file was much more important, a recording of a meeting that took place 3 months ago, the very meeting that no one in the company knew about. After the initial discussion of the project with Michael Waters from TechGrowth, we began to communicate regularly. Officially, it was to clarify the details of the project. Unofficially, because we were both interested in discussing strategic marketing decisions. One day, after another discussion, Michael invited me to lunch. Emily, I'm impressed with your approach. I'd like to introduce you to some people from our company. That's how I met Simon Brown, CEO of Tech Growth. This meeting was not officially planned and took place without my management's knowledge. It was just a business lunch where we discussed the market outlook and the future of technology marketing. I did not mention this meeting in my reports, as it was Michael's personal initiative and not part of our official collaboration. But it was at that lunch that Simon gave me his business card with his personal number and said, "If you ever need advice or support, don't hesitate to contact me directly." I kept that business card as a talisman, never thinking I would ever use it. Now it was time to take it out. Staring at the phone number, I weighed my options. I could sign the agreement, take the money, and start looking for a new job. That would be the easy way out. Or I could call and tell the truth to a man who valued honesty and directness in business, as I had learned during our meeting. The risk was huge, but what did I have to lose? I had already lost my job. I took a deep breath and dialed the number. The phone rang for so long that I began to wonder if I should have called. Maybe Simon Brown had changed his number or simply didn't remember me after that one meeting. With each ring, my resolve wavered, but then a familiar voice answered. Simon Brown speaking. My throat went dry. I took a long second to gather my thoughts. Mr. Brown, this is Emily Johnson from Global Vision. We met 3 months ago when I was working on a marketing strategy for your company. Of course, Emily. His voice warmed. I remember our conversation well. Michael told me a lot about your work. How's the project coming along? Here it was, the moment of truth. Actually, Mr. Brown, that's why I'm calling. There's a situation that you should be aware of before Thursday's presentation. I took a deep breath and told him everything. How I had spent 8 months working on the strategy, how management had taken the project away from me and given it to David, how I had been fired when I tried to object. I tried to speak calmly and professionally without getting emotional or accusatory. I have all the documentation proving that I came up with the ideas and concepts, I concluded. And I understand that there is a contract between our companies, but I felt you deserved to know the truth about the origin of the ideas that will be presented to you. There was silence on the other end of the line. The seconds dragged on agonizingly. Finally, Simon spoke. Emily, I appreciate your honesty and courage. Not many people would have made this call. I understand that I'm putting you in an awkward position. On the contrary, he interrupted me, you're helping me avoid a much more awkward situation in the future. Tech Growth values transparency and ethical business practices. It's important for us to know who we're working with. It was more than I expected. Can you send me copies of your work by email? He asked. I'd like to see the full version, not condensed to 10 slides. I immediately sent him an archive with my original presentation and all accompanying materials, including the history of changes. Thank you, Emily, Simon said. Give me some time to review the materials. I'll be in touch. After the call, I was overcome with mixed feelings. On the one hand, I felt relieved that the truth had been told. On the other hand, I was anxious about what would happen next. I didn't want to get revenge on my former colleagues. I just wanted justice to be done. I spent the rest of the day in a strange state of limbo, checking my phone every 5 minutes. Around 9 o'clock in the evening, the phone rang from an unknown number. Emily Johnson? Asked a female voice. This is Lisa Hawkins, Mr. Brown's assistant. He would like to meet with you tomorrow at 10 in the morning at our office. Would that be possible? Yes, of course, I replied, trying to hide my surprise. Excellent. And Miss Johnson, she added before hanging up. Mr. Brown was very impressed with your work. I hardly slept that night. What did this meeting mean? What did Simon want? Maybe he just wanted to verify my story before confronting Global Vision? Or does he have other plans? In the morning, I dressed as professionally as possible, a dark blue suit that I usually saved for important presentations, minimal makeup, my hair pulled back into a neat bun. I wanted to look confident despite my inner turmoil. The Tech Growth office was located in a modern skyscraper in the city's business center. The spacious lobby with high ceilings and glass walls created a feeling of transparency and openness, values that, according to Simon, were at the heart of the company. Someone was already waiting for me at the reception desk. Miss Johnson? Mr. Brown is expecting you in the conference room on the 25th floor. When I got out of the elevator, I was met by Lisa, an elegant, middle-aged woman with an attentive gaze. "Please follow me," she said, leading me down the corridor to the double doors of the conference room. I expected to see only Simon, but several people were sitting at a large oval table. Simon Brown himself, Michael Waters, the director of development with whom I had been communicating all this time, and 3 other people in business suits whom I did not know. "Emily, it's good to see you." Simon stood up to greet me. "Let me introduce you. Our CFO, Alan Reed, head of legal, Jennifer Croft, and director of innovation, Danielle Marino." I shook hands with everyone present, trying to hide my nervousness. Gathering the company's key executives for a meeting with me? What was going on? "Please, have a seat," Simon said, pointing to a seat next to him. "I imagine you're surprised by the composition of our meeting." "To be honest, yes," I replied. "Last night, after our conversation, I studied the materials you sent me," he said, placing his hand on the thick folder in front of him. "And I must say, I'm impressed. This isn't just a marketing strategy. It's a comprehensive business transformation plan that could take us to a whole new level." "Thank you," I said, feeling myself blush at the compliment. "I also checked your background," he continued. "Michael confirmed that he has been working with you all this time, not with Mr. Clark, who is supposed to give the presentation tomorrow." Michael nodded. "All the ideas we've been discussing over the past few months were yours, Emily. I immediately suspected something was wrong when someone else was suddenly assigned to give the final presentation." "What's more," Jennifer Croft interjected, "what happened at Global Vision could be considered a breach of business ethics and potentially fraud. They were going to present someone else's work as the marketing department's own. And that's why we're here." Simon tapped his fingers on the table. "Emily, we have a business proposal for you." My heart skipped a beat. "We want to hire you directly as a strategic marketing consultant to complete this project and implement it," he continued, "without Global Vision as an intermediary." I was so taken aback that I lost my voice. "That's a very generous offer, Mr. Brown." "Simon, please. And it's not just generosity, it's good business sense. Why would we work with an agency that steals other people's ideas when we can work directly with the person who came up with them?" Alan Reed, the CFO, opened the folder in front of him. "We've prepared a preliminary 6-month contract with the option to extend. Your fee will be double your former salary, plus bonuses for successful implementation of the strategy." "What about the contract with Global Vision?" I asked. "You must have obligations to them." Jennifer smiled. "The contract includes a clause about providing accurate information and original material. If they were going to pass off your work as a collective effort by the marketing department, that would be a breach on their part. We have every reason to terminate the contract." "Besides," Simon added, "you no longer work for Global Vision, so the non-compete clause in your employment contract does not apply to this situation." I was amazed at how thoroughly they had thought everything through. They really wanted to work with me. Not with the agency, not with the marketing department, but with me personally. "And one more thing," interjected Danielle Marino, Director of Innovation. "Your strategy includes elements that go beyond traditional marketing. There are business transformation components that could change not only Tech Growth's positioning, but also our approach to innovation. I would like you to also consult with my department." It was more than I could have hoped for. Not just a new job, but an opportunity to realize my ideas to the fullest, without the constraints of corporate bureaucracy. "I need some time to think about it," I said, although I already knew the answer. "Of course," Simon nodded. "But we would appreciate a decision before tomorrow's presentation. We have an alternative plan in case." "An alternative plan?" Simon exchanged glances with his colleagues. "We are still officially expecting a presentation from Global Vision tomorrow. If you accept our offer, I would like you to attend as well." I frowned. "You want me to be at a presentation where David will present my work as his own?" "Exactly." Simon's eyes lit up. "I think it will be a very enlightening meeting for everyone involved." I began to understand what he was up to. This wasn't just a business move, but a lesson in business ethics for Global Vision. "You didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement when you left, did you?" Jennifer asked. "No," I shook my head. "I had 24 hours to think about it, and the deadline hasn't expired yet." "Excellent," she made a note in her notebook. Then there are no legal obstacles. The meeting lasted another hour. We discussed the details of the contract, the expectations of both parties, and the work plan for the coming months. When we were done, Simon walked me to the elevator. "Emily, what happened to you is unfair," he said when we were alone. "But you did the right thing by coming to me. In business, it's not just about strategy, it's about honesty and integrity. You've proven that you have both." "Thank you for your trust," I replied sincerely. "I won't let you down." "I know," he said, holding out his hand. "See you tomorrow?" "See you tomorrow." I shook his hand, feeling my confidence grow. As I left the tech growth building, I felt strangely light. Just yesterday, my career seemed ruined, and today new and unexpected opportunities were opening up before me. On the way home, I thought about Simon's offer and the upcoming presentation. How would David feel when he saw me in the room? What would Robert say when he realized his plan had failed? Part of me wanted to see their faces at that moment, but not out of a desire for revenge. Rather, it was a desire for justice to be restored. At home, I stared at the folder with the severance package from Global Vision for a long time. 3 months' salary had seemed like good compensation yesterday. Today, it looked like a pathetic attempt to silence me. I picked up a pen and wrote a short letter. "I am declining your severance package offer and will not be signing the non-disclosure agreement. Sincerely, Emily Johnson." As I sealed the envelope, I felt like I had come full circle. Tomorrow would be the start of a new chapter in my career, a chapter in which I would not just be executing other people's decisions, but a strategist, a consultant, someone whose ideas would change the business. I was ready for the challenge, and for tomorrow's meeting with my former colleagues, too. The day of the presentation arrived faster than I expected. I arrived at the tech growth office half an hour before the appointed time, dressed in my best suit. I was more nervous than I had ever been before, not because of the presentation itself, but because of the upcoming meeting with my former colleagues. Simon met me in the lobby. "Ready for our little show?" he asked with a slight smile. "To be honest, I'm a little nervous," I admitted, adjusting my cuff. "Being nervous before an important meeting is a good sign. It means you care," he said encouragingly, touching my shoulder. "Come on, everyone else is waiting." We went up to the conference room where the tech growth management team had gathered. Michael nodded to me warmly, and Jennifer Croft, the head of the legal department, winked with a slight conspiratorial smile. Simon suggested I sit in the far corner of the room, where the shadow from the column fell. "Let them start the presentation first," he said. "It'll be more interesting if they don't notice you right away." At exactly 10 a.m., the conference room doors opened, and Robert, David, and 2 other Global Vision employees entered. Among them, I was surprised to see Jessica. She looked around the room nervously, but didn't notice me sitting in the shadows. The meeting began with the usual greetings and handshakes. Robert was particularly talkative, praising the hard work of the team on the project. David stood nearby with the air of a chief strategy architect, nodding importantly from time to time. "Before you begin," Simon interrupted, as they were about to start the presentation, "I have a couple of questions about the preparation of the material." "Of course, we're open to any questions," Robert replied readily. "Great. Who exactly worked on this strategy?" Robert hesitated slightly, glancing quickly at David. "It was a project for the entire marketing department, led by David. We brought in various specialists at different stages." "More specifically?" Simon insisted, leaning back in his chair. "Who was the main developer of the concept?" "I coordinated the entire process," David interjected, straightening up. "The concept was developed collectively, but the final version was created by Emily Johnson," Simon finished for him. "Who you fired after taking credit for her work." A heavy silence hung in the room. David's face paled, and Robert coughed nervously, fiddling with his tie. "That's not entirely true," he began, but his voice sounded unconvincing. "You know what's interesting, Mr. Dixon?" Simon continued, leaning forward. "Apparently, no one at your company knew that I personally met with Emily 3 months ago, and that she contacted me directly yesterday." With that, he nodded to me, and I stood up, stepping out of the shadows into the light. Jessica let out a quiet sigh, covering her mouth with her hand. David looked as if he had seen a ghost, and Robert froze with his mouth open. Hello, I said calmly, meeting their gazes, even though my heart was pounding like crazy. What is she doing here? Robert finally managed to say, turning to Simon. Miss Johnson is now working directly with Tech Growth as a strategic consultant, Simon explained with a businesslike smile. We reviewed her original presentation, the full version, not your 10-slide summary, and were so impressed that we offered her a contract. The shock on the faces of the Global Vision representatives was almost palpable. David began whispering frantically to Robert, who waved him away. But we have a contract, Robert muttered, trying to collect himself. You can't just— Oh, we can, Jennifer Croft interrupted, opening a folder of documents. Clause 12.3 of our contract allows us to terminate the partnership in the event of misrepresentation or breach of business ethics. Passing off someone else's work as the result of a team effort definitely falls under that category. Furthermore, added Michael Waters, I personally communicated with Emily throughout the entire project. She developed this strategy on her own, not your team, as you claim. Robert looked increasingly confused. But we spent months on this project. No, I interrupted quietly but firmly. I spent months, 8 months of my life, and you spent 1 day copying my work and firing me. Jessica lowered her eyes, unable to meet my gaze. David looked as if he was ready to sink through the floor. We have 2 options, Simon continued, folding his arms on the table. Either you leave now and we close this incident, or we make this story public, which is unlikely to reflect well on Global Vision's reputation. There was a heavy pause. Finally, Robert broke the silence. This is some kind of misunderstanding. We can discuss. There is no misunderstanding, Simon cut him off. We have complete documentation of the project with timestamps confirming Emily's authorship and Michael's testimony about their interaction. Your company tried to deceive us. This is not the kind of partnership we are looking for. Robert looked suspiciously at Jessica, who was still avoiding eye contact. Was it you? Did you help her? No, I interjected, not wanting to betray my former friend, no matter what. It was my initiative. I kept copies of all my work and went directly to Simon. Robert clenched his fists but held back. After a tense pause, he gathered his papers. Fine, we'll leave, but this isn't the end of the story, Mr. Brown. Oh, it may not be the end for you, Simon nodded. For us, it's just the beginning of a new, more honest partnership. By the way, he smiled slightly, the CEO would like to speak with you. Do you have any further questions? Robert blinked in confusion, clearly not understanding the reference. David just looked defeated. They gathered their things and headed for the exit. Only Jessica lingered for a second, catching up with me. I'm happy for you, she whispered softly. I mean it. I nodded, unable to say anything in response. Part of me was still hurt by her, but another part understood that she was acting out of fear of losing her job. When the door closed behind the Global Vision delegation, there was a moment of silence in the room, and then Simon clapped his hands. Well, that was quite dramatic. Now, Emily, how about showing us the real presentation? I smiled and took out the flash drive with the full version. I'd be happy to. For the next 2 hours, I presented my strategy directly to Tech Growth's management. No cuts, no distortions, with an explanation of every important element. And it was a wonderful feeling to finally get recognition for my work. After the presentation, Simon personally walked me out of the building. Brilliant, Emily. I am confident that our collaboration will be long and fruitful. Thank you for your trust, I replied. It means a lot to me. You know, he said thoughtfully, looking out at the city through the panoramic windows of the lobby. Dishonesty is not uncommon in business, but it is much rarer to find the courage to stand up to it. You have both talent and character, a rare combination. I left the Tech Growth building with a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time, a feeling of complete control over my destiny. What had started as a professional tragedy had turned into an opportunity I would never have had I stayed at Global Vision. A month later, I learned that Robert had been forced to leave the company after the story of my work being stolen had finally leaked to professional circles. David was demoted, and Jessica, she wrote me a letter apologizing and asking to meet. I haven't decided yet if I'm ready for that. Sometimes life presents us with challenges that seem unfair, but sometimes those very challenges open doors we never knew existed. And the sweetest revenge is not destroying someone else's plans, but building your own success on the ruins of their betrayal. My story has taught me one important lesson: never let others determine your worth. And always have a backup plan.